So we are fake Mike Flanagan fans. And
no,
no?
we're not. We're not. We were. But we're not anymore.
I don't know what happened with this one. We started watching it right when it came out, and then it just kind of fell to the wayside, which to me just suggests that we weren't as into it. Otherwise, we would have continued.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know. I think we just kind of got busy and some other stuff happened, honestly.
We watched so much stuff.
I know.
We could have got back to this, but we just didn't.
didn't.
So we have no excuse.
Okay.
So, this is based on Christopher Pike books, but most notably, obviously, The Midnight Club, which I actually read really recently. So I remember most of it. Now, does it line up with the show? Yes and no. But really quickly, we will point out that the episodes that they do are based on books that he wrote, and we tell the stories in there. The Wicked Heart, Give Me a Kiss, See You Later, Witch, The Road to Nowhere, The Eternal Enemy, and then when our main character here finds this like journal book, whatever the hell, you get 3 direct references to The Starlight Crystal, Spellbound, and The Visitor. So as Christopher Pike, as Christopher Pike fans, I think this was kind of like a dream come true in a way, where it was like, oh my god, Christopher Pike adaptations, they're just, they don't happen. You get R.L. Stine ones, right? You get plenty of Stephen King's, but when it comes to like 90s YA horror novels, you've got R.L. Stine, who was like the king, right? He started Fear Street and all that. And then you've got Christopher Pike, which is like second tier. Like he's like next guy down. Then down from there, you've got like D.E. Atkins and Diane Ho, and like you've got these other A. Bates, stuff like that, where you recognize the names, you recognize the covers. They all had similar spines. And yeah, I mean, I grew up on these books. I've owned so many of those different ones. Unfortunately, I got rid of a lot of them. But anyways, let's not talk too much about that. Let's talk about the show. So, okay. Now, overall, let's say first, my thoughts on the show was that I liked it, but number one, it is a lot to deal with. Like, I could not stop thinking about these kids' imminent demise the entirety of this show.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, that is just at the forefront. Now, if you don't know what the show's about, this is about kids who are terminally ill, and they go to this place called Bright Cliff, and it's basically just like hospice for sick children who are dying. I mean, they're not like children, but they're under 18, over, 16, 15. They're like 17, 18s, right? Like they're all like late teens. And yeah, I mean, they form a club and they tell stories, Are You Afraid of the Dark style, to one another. Now in the book, they tell their own stories. Mike Flanagan and company decided to tell Christopher Pike tales. I personally would have liked them to do one or the other. I would have liked, I like the concept, right? Like I like this idea of like, oh, they could tell stories, but like this anthology idea that this show has, the Are You Afraid of the Dark thing, and then the wraparounds of the real story. I just never cared, even though like, I know these books and whatever, like I never felt like these stories were really told and fleshed out in a way that I cared. Like they never felt like anthology segments to me. They just felt like these loose stories these kids came up with on the fly. And it's like, it's kind of a disservice to the books because I feel like they should get proper adaptations and that this would have been better had it just been kids who got together, very Are You Afraid of the Dark style. They could even be dying maybe. And they can tell these tales and you can have a little bit of a wraparound. But I don't know, it's you're taking so much away because the episode's like 50 minutes long and you do like 25 minutes is like the wraparound and 25 minutes is the story. And they just never feel fleshed out, complete, like full stories. They just feel like their stories, which is what they are. But you're like taking, because in the book, it's just kind of like them dealing with what's going on. Mm-hmm. And they're telling stories that kind of match that. And they kind of tried to pick books that sort of match up to that. But you're not really getting proper adaptations. Like if you're like a big fan of these books, you want to see proper adaptations of these things and to like finally get them, but to be so almost half-assed of just like, here's like a rough version of it. It's almost like the Cliff Notes version, very condensed, very quick. And I don't know, it just didn't work for me. Like the Fear Street movies were far better, even though they don't cover anything in the books really. They're just, but as far as the R.L. Stine thing goes. But otherwise, I like it. I definitely don't love it. And my biggest issue is the anthology stuff. I like all the stuff in the hospital with the kids. I think all that stuff is very good. I think everyone's good in it. It's depressing as fuck. But it's good. And it sucks that there's no second season. But there you go. What did you think?
Well, I mean, I haven't read all of the books that their stories were based on. I'd only read one of them. But for me, I thought...
Road to Nowhere.
Which is the Road to Nowhere, yeah.
Which is an episode in here, which was cool.
But, like, I don't know. I see what you mean, and I think that it's fair. Like, for people who are massive fans of Christopher Pike books, like, not getting feature-length episode, like, adaptations of the stories, I get it. Like, there was definitely stuff in Road to Nowhere that was changed or left out, you know, that it's in the book but not in the episode. But for me, it didn't bother me at all. I actually feel like all the stories that they told were really relevant to what was going on with the overall story and with the characters and what they were going through. So I really liked all the adaptations. I especially like that the kids themselves, like the actors, are playing the characters in their stories, and I just think that that's really cool. There's one episode which I think you said was the highest rated one, which was just, it was it was perfect for me. I think that's like definitely my favorite episode of the whole season.
Same.
The whole series, and it just was really cool. I was so into the idea that all these characters from the different stories were kind of coming into her psyche as she was, you know, passing. But I love the show. I think the show is wonderful. I agree that it's super depressing, though. It was really hard to watch at times, and I definitely was crying throughout the majority of the series. But despite that, I still think that it was just so well done. And it's like, I was kind of trying to talk to you about this the other night, where, you know, we watch a lot of horror movies, obviously, where people are dying in super brutal ways. Mm-hmm. But in this case, you know, the kids are dying from a very mundane thing, which is illness. And it's something that, like, anybody could go through. And, you know, just kind of watching the process, like their grieving process, and they're coming to terms with what's happening to them and happening to their friends, I just found that to be, like, very bittersweet. Like, it was really beautiful in a really sorrowful way. And it just hit me really hard. I really, really loved it. I think that, you know, it needs a second season, which it's never going to get.
No.
And that's very disappointing to me, because there was definitely a setup where I have so many questions. And you shared with me last night that Mike Flanagan has posted, like, what his plan was for the rest of the show on his Tumblr, which was cool to kind of read through. But obviously it would have been better to see, you know, actually made a reality. But I don't know, I think, you know, like, the horror aspects were there. It's just a really somber show, but it's about, like, life and death in a really, like, evocative way.
Yeah.
I was really into it. I think all the characters, all the actors did a wonderful job. and this like the house was really cool, and I just loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have much preferred a Christopher Pike anthology series.
Yeah.
Right? I would have liked just every night you get a new adaptation from his books. They're short, right? So you could do these in 50-minute episodes, and I don't even need the wraparound. And I feel like you could do the Midnight Club in an episode, and really get a lot out of it because of what they're doing in the book. I feel like can be done in an hour. I don't think it needs to be spread out over 10 episodes like it was. Even though, because if you take out the anthology segments, right, which is a lot of it, it wouldn't go down to an hour by any means. I mean, it'd still be like 4 hours long at least. But I feel like you could condense down a lot of that into, like, you could even make them hour-and-a-half long episodes, feature length episodes where you release, like, one a week or like six a season or whatever, and you adapt, like, the entire book, and the Midnight Club could have been one of those books. And I think that would have been a cool project for Flanagan and company to have taken on, to really work on those stories. But as they are now, I don't know. I never connected to them as much. They were fine. They were fine. And I did like the idea of using the actors, like you said.
Yeah. Well, and just, I connected to them really heavily, and I feel like, for me, it was cool that it was a shared universe in a way of all of Christopher Pike's works. I mean, granted, I wish I had read more, before we started the show, but, now when I go and read those books, it'll be interesting to kind of see what was changed, because, there were some things that they adjusted to fit the show better. But I was a fan of that. But I totally get it. Like, I think that if, having the episodes dedicated to each book would have been cool to see. But I don't know. I just like how it was all planned out and, like, linked together, and the wraparound and everything. For me, it worked really well.
I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it doesn't work. I just feel underwhelmed with it. Right? Like, there's just something missing with the anthology segments. So to me, it's like everything else is fine, depressing, but good. And then just the anthology segments, the stories, I don't know. I guess I never felt like they were full stories. Like, I felt like they were just kind of quick rushed versions of these books, and that they tried to kind of shoehorn into their pasts, or like their present grieving process with their own demise, and like how they see themselves, or like the stories that they're writing to kind of share a glimpse into where they're at in their headspace, or like what they thought of their life or whatever, right? But in the book, they're much more relevant to who they are. But because they were trying to kind of do a twofer, it's like, well, we'll do one book, and then we're going to do all the other books inside this one book, right? And it's fine. I get the concept, and when they say it out loud, it's like, oh yeah, you could do the Midnight Club, but instead of that, you do these stories.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, that could be really cool.
I feel like
But having seen it.
Yeah. I feel like I'd have to read some of the other books, because, The Road to Nowhere, I just felt like it fit so perfectly, with the theme for that episode. So, besides like couple things that were changed, I didn't really feel like it was shoehorned. I felt like it was just like some things were adjusted more for,
You are mentioning one of the better anthology segments for sure in this. I feel like The Road to Nowhere is actually done pretty well. Right? As to where, like, the Eternal Enemy or something, where, I don't know, there was something about that. It just felt very, very rushed.
I see.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's just certain stories that just felt that way to me. That I feel like, oh man, if we could just spend 25 more minutes here.
Sure.
Right? We could have gotten way more out of this book adaptation. And I just wish that's the route they went. That's my own thing. I don't hate the show. I think that it's getting unjustly hated, but I definitely understand why people would find it dragging because it's definitely a drag.
I thought it was so compelling,
Yeah.
but a downer for sure, because I don't think a lot of people really want to think about death that way. So that's like the biggest thing, but it is depressing, but you know, that's kind of one of the functions I feel like of film and art is to let us kind of confront our own relationship with dying, because it is something that we will all do. And I really appreciated this show, and I found it to be really heartfelt, and I'm bummed that we're not getting more of it, so.
I think all the characters are memorable and realistic, so I did like all of the characters. Anya was definitely my favorite character. I related to her the most. I'd be the one that was in there just pissed off and fucking, you know, telling everyone to go screw themselves and like keep your religious prayer nonsense to yourself. Like, I would be that person for sure. I'd be like, are you serious? I'm like 17 and dying. You really think that I'm going to think that this is for any reason? Like, get fucked. So for me, yeah, Anya is definitely me 1,000%. I'd just be so angry the whole time.
Yeah.
So what about you?
I don't know who I would be. I mean, like, I kind of feel like
the liar.
No, yeah, I definitely wouldn't be her. I kind of feel like I would probably be more like Kevin. I feel like I related to him being like, I want to be a good memory for people, you know, and that's like...
It'd be a good memory for you.
Yeah. I felt like his whole thing was really, it's just tragic, you know, trying to like keep yourself in good standing with people, like as you're dying, but, you know, that it's not always possible to make everyone happy, so.
Yeah. You get Heather Langenkamp in here.
Yeah.
Which was cool to see.
It was really cool. She did a great job.
They really tried to expand upon the book. They changed the book quite a bit. They dropped a lot of stuff, and they added a lot of stuff, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, it was good.
I loved it. I thought it was awesome.
That's great. That's wonderful. That's how I want everything we watch to be.
Yeah.
So.
But I get it. I get the criticisms for sure. But I think Mike Flanagan is very talented and has quite an eye for like the macabre and.
I will say this really quick. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
I thought the horror in this, like the jump scares and the monsters and all that stuff that's like in their world, I thought it was terrible.
You thought it was terrible?
Yeah, I didn't think any of the horror in this worked.
Oh, interesting.
I thought the old woman with like the dead eyes and all that stuff, I thought she looked, I didn't like the look of her. I don't like how that was utilized. Like every time they went for like the jump scare or something scary, like compared to like the bent neck lady or like any of that stuff, it's like, this is a major downgrade to me. Like I didn't like any of the horror that I remember. If there's something, maybe there's something like a thing here or there that I might have liked. If you reminded me of them, I'd be like, oh yeah, that looked cool or that was cool. But there's like that old woman that she keeps saying awful. I couldn't stand her the whole time.
I liked her fine. I didn't have a problem with her at all. I think it's a different feeling though, obviously, than Hill House. Like this. I mean, obviously, like I don't know what they were supposed to represent or like who those people were, so I'm not sure, and I don't know if that was in the post because I kind of like quickly skimmed through that post about like what the plan was. But at any rate, it felt more, of course, like are they confronting death or like the deaths that have happened in the house, and so it just felt a little different to me than Hill House, but that's fine. I mean. They weren't like, I don't know. I was okay with them.
Hill House is like...
Well, yeah, Hill House is always going to be
so
my favorite of his works that he's done with like Netflix.
Well, we'll see.
But
The Fall of the House of Usher is the last thing that comes out sometime this year.
I've loved everything that he's done, though. Like, that I've seen.
I feel like I'm talking more down on this than I am.
No,
There's
it's
just
okay.
I'm just kind of middle of the road on it. Like
Yeah,
I liked
totally
it.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
That's all I got to say.
All right.
So, anything more?
No.
And of course, we get tons of Mike Flanagan people in here that you would expect.
I love it.
You
I
know,
like seeing those actors.
although his wife does not show up in this
I know.
that I
Maybe
ever
she was
remember.
gonna be in season 2. Maybe.
Yeah.
But I like it. I like seeing, like, you know, I mean, there's new faces, of course, but I like that there's actors, that he has a relationship with, and I'm like, you know what, like, if I was a director and I had people that I worked with that I was like, I like what you do, like, of course you would put them in your, you know, your shit, so.
Tarantino does it all the time.
Exactly.
Anya will be in Fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah, I'm excited to see her in that.
So, that's that.
That's that.
So, this is an old show at this point. I mean, this came out, what? How long ago now? This came out 3 months ago. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
we're
we're late on it.
Behind.
We're so
almost
late on
4 months behind.
Yeah.
I mean, this is early October. We're in late January.
Yeah.
Whoa, this took us way too long to get to.
know.
So, I'm glad you loved it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, all right, let's move on.